we're here.
All right, guys, I want to say thank you to everybody tuning into episode 10 of The Sit Down. Tonight we have Brooke Odyssey joining us. And this is somebody who has done their homework where most people are maybe too afraid to do so. Brooke has spent years studying how civilizations rise and fall and how financial systems collapse and how the power quietly shifts from one system into the next. He believes that our current financial system has died back in 2008, and now we're witnessing the controlled transition into something entirely new, something entirely different. We're going to unpack her story, her research, and her mission is to wake people up. So, Brooke, before we get into your research, could you please tell us a little bit about your story and how exactly you got into being in a position where you could share your perspective with other people?
Yeah, it's a. Can you hear me okay, or is there an echo?
Yes.
Good. Okay, awesome. I know I come to the space in a little bit different way than a lot of people. And really, when I trace my origin story back to where it all began, it really began in the last financial crisis that we had and the Great Recession. I was at university and I was in my economics class, and I had already been working in the banks ever since high school. And I knew that I wanted to probably start a career in banking. And so, of course, I took an interest in money and banking. And so I was already kind of down that rabbit hole when kind of the trivial poo poo hit the fan back then. And so I'm in my econ class, and the professor is actually the state treasurer of Oklahoma. And he raised the question, should we bail out the banks? And I had just got done reading his reading, like that he assigned for class, which was Adam Smith, which talked about free markets and how capitalism, it demands that the bad actors fall. and it demands that the system clear those people out for the better people who do business to transact. And so that and so I was the only one that raised her hand that said, yes, we should let the banks fail. And so it's very fascinating to me that, that professor could say one thing and then do another. And so I watched that all unfold, and I spent, basically since that time researching what happened, which led me down to, historical cycles of these financial crises happening, and then the different types of financial crises that happen, and the events that take place around them that can signal to us where we're at in history, which I think is very important whenever you overlay it on top of the technology that we talk about today, because it all coincides with really everything that you're seeing in your headlines. And so fast forward, of course, it's past the cough, cough, and everything that kind of constructed Brooke previously. We're talking like a faith crisis, just really like everything that constructed her personally had just been laid bare. And so I was, of course, we're all secluded from people at this time, and I'm watching my friend. He's mining a cryptocurrency, and I'm like, okay. And he actually works at banks. I'm like, he's a smart guy, and I try not to criticize anything I don't understand. And so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna unpack what is cryptocurrency, what is all of this, and I very quickly realized that despite all the noise that we see going around and all the trading and get rich quick and pump and dumps, that there is a very interesting story and infrastructure that's being built right underneath our noses. And so I became obsessed, because I unpacked, the last financial crisis, I watched how we behaved during this past cough cough and followed the money and made up some pretty wild calls that I was made fun of. And unfortunately, but also in ways fortunately, I've prepared and yeah, we're here.
During your time at the university, you said you were the only student that kind of believed in the idea that we shouldn't bail out the banks. Do you fundamentally believe that we should have a free market and that competition is really the correct way for us to approach the financial system, as well as why do you believe that your students or the classmates around you believe that we should bail out the market, bail out the other banks?
Okay, so I think in theory, a lot of, and I can rise above politics. I'll talk about both sides because really it goes beyond politics and it goes to monetary policy. Um, but in general, because I've spent some time at university and I've actually worked in university, and have gotten to know some of these professors personally, and now having my own, step back, having a formal education in what I was taught, and then having kind of a post education realization that really what I was taught is not really how the real world works, and business is done very, very differently. But on the surface, it can look the same and have this illusion of safety and very university prim proper language, which is just wallpapering over a bunch of pile of poop. So really, most of your professors at universities, whether they know it or not, are trained under what's called MM2, or a modern monetary theory, which basically means that they believe that debt does not matter and that we can print to oblivion. And especially since America is the world reserve currency and we have the military backing us and, Team America, World Police, yada, yada. We're the dollar, we can print it. Oh, well. Well, those of us who are very much of the Austrian kind of economics way of thinking and a few other schools of thought kind of mixed in there, we very much think that debt does matter, and we're about to find out how much, which is why basically we need this new system. As this old one is dying, it's going to shift very similarly as we've seen historically, but flip-wise. And so it's very interesting. We'll get into that.
That's so interesting. I mean, you got to figure that most people are not questioning the narrative, especially when it's coming from the university level. For them to, you got to think that we as Americans, even in Europe, but you would hope that the education system is trying to create a generation of critical thinkers, except when they actually critically think. They destroy that light bulb. They don't want you to think. They want you to buy into the narrative. Was there a single moment or an event that made you realize that our financial structure didn't actually add up to what they were telling us to?
Really unpacking the 2008 crisis. And you can watch a lot of different layers of videos, points of views of that crisis to kind of help you and entertain you. So it doesn't bore you to sleep. Thank you, whoever is giving, thank you, Ron Tutorial. Very kind of you. I just distribute amongst the community. But I think it was really unpacking the 2008 financial crisis. And really, whenever you study how crises form and you study money, like you study what's called sound money, you really then, when you understand sound money, then you can start to see beyond the facade of the institutions, the unconstitutional institutions that our government has propped up since our forefathers, thought out how a financial system should be and how far we've drifted from that. And we're feeling that pain right now. And so it's really just uncovering really some kind of hard truths about how money and finance works across the world. And then once you can kind of get past some sleepless nights and some dark rabbit holes, you can kind of make it out on the other side and just, you know, play your 5D chess. So.
When looking at 2008, you're looking at the bailout, you're looking at the money printing, you're looking at the derivative bubble. I mean, it all makes sense. But can you explain exactly what you mean by saying that the system died in 2008?
Yeah. So, and it depends on how far back you want to go, but I'll just start from 1971, whenever Nixon took us off the gold standard.
Please.
Ever since that time, what happened was our money debased from what kept it sound completely. And we had drifted from that time since the Bretton Woods system was founded. Which was around, the last time that something like I think is approaching happened, which was World War II, unfortunately, in 1945. So that's whenever Bretton Woods became the monetary system that was globally used. Fort Knox became the holding, fort that hold the world's gold reserves. And that was a promise that we would exchange with the world. With a solid backed currency, that they could trust the dollar because we had sound money backed by gold, the world's gold. Well, 1971, France comes and they're like, bet, here's a ship full, ship with a P, ship full of cash money. We want our gold. Well, overnight, Nixon takes us off the gold standard, depegs us. And if you look at so many different, you would think unrelated charts, we're talking about divorce rates going up, we're talking about, single parent homes, very sociological issues that you start to see correlate with the money printing going on. And it's very fascinating. Very fascinating. You can look that up at a website called WTF Happened in 1971. It's a very interesting compilation of all of these charts that seem to correlate with that event. And so we get the 2008 financial crisis, which we should have let them fail, which people want to blame capitalism from where we are right now. And that is very, very dangerous to do. And I argue all the time because there's so much resentment happening because the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer for very, very different reasons than from what our politicians want to point the finger at. And so I really want, especially at a time like this, at this point in history, I want people to hear me very, very carefully because they will want us to fight each other over this. We're talking about French Revolution type of thing, very ugly things in the streets, let them eat cake off with their heads, angry farmers with pitchforks. We have to be careful because if we don't fix the money, it doesn't care. It doesn't matter what happens. So that's kind of a long answer to that question.
Do you think that the average person even realizes that that what they call the dollar isn't what it used to be?
I don't think that they do and so when we talk about a currency collapse or a dollar collapse, people think about one single event. Bam, one day you wake up, you can't withdraw money. All of these doomsday type of events. That is not what we're talking about. A currency collapse looks very different. That is just sometimes a symptom of one of these collapses. But the events that take place around it, actually, we see with World War, Civil War setting up. Ray Dalio goes through this very, very extensively. And so he's one of the people who I have studied the most of. And then once you layer where we're at, and when I say where we're at, look around you, what pillar of society is really, really strong right now? It's not our money system. We're printing it to oblivion. Inflation is about to run rampant. We are lowering interest rates into an environment that stocks have never been higher, and the debt load has never been higher, and bond yields are dropping, and it is up is down, and down is up when it comes to any indication that we are in any sort of normal time. So it's very, very fascinating to be watching the Fed right now. It's fascinating to watch our government with the Fed. I think that that's also another signal that we are shifting into a very different financial system, or that the one that we have is about to get a major overhaul. Whenever you see this internal fighting, even between our executive branch and what people mistakenly think is a part of our federal government, which is the Federal Reserve, which I have to remind people that the Federal Reserve is neither federal nor is it a reserve. It's a separate entity. It is beyond the Constitution and the executive branch, really the Constitution of the land. It's beyond the laws of us. And so I am really interested on a monetary and historical level if we could actually get the Fed abolished.
Yep, say it. I knew it was coming. To say it.
But here's the thing. I don't think that there's always going to be someone in control of the system. And unfortunately, retail always gets left holding the bag. So,
Do you think that we're living in a point of time where we're kind of just surviving before another correction, or has the reset already started?
it's already started. So that's what I mean by look around you. Like, this is all, what would you expect if a global currency crisis is about to happen, or one of these financial shifts were about to happen? And this is something that in essence, I hypothesized would happen when I researched what type of system was coming. I said no one would ever accept this system unless we absolutely had to. And so I said, what would it look like to absolutely have to accept the system? It's people basically begging to be saved from inflation, from get on this UBI, we're in a financial crisis. If you remember back in the 2008 financial crisis, we got stimulus checks. And so one of the ways I thought about this technology rolling out, and one of the organizations that I followed was the Fed. Our Federal Reserve had a task force called the Faster Payments Task Force that turned into Fed Now. And so I really watched their moves and what they were studying there, and realized, they're creating a faster system. And so I hypothesized that in the next financial crisis, they would use this system to say, here's our problem and here's our solution. And when I mean what's the problem, I'm talking a global liquidity crisis. And so we're talking about values possibly falling where collateral locks up, and liquidity across the world locks up like a heart attack and the flow of a system. And so what this technology does actually allows the system of money to flow more freely and less frictionless, and allows, like, if a financial crisis were to happen, it actually helps mitigate some of the hard-going effects of a financial crisis.
So from gold in the 1913s to the petrodollar or the fiat dollar in 1969, 1970 to predictably digital in the 2020s, how disruptive do you believe that this new form of the financial system is going to be? What happens to the individuals that have fiat locked in the bank account? They have fiat locked in their 401ks, their IRAs. Is this going to be a simplistic transition into a new financial system, or is this going to be disruptive?
So this, unfortunately, very disruptive, because here's what's happening at the core. If you hold fiat, if you hold debt, as our government is printing to cover deficits, printing to cover failed bond auctions, printing to cover The wars we're headed into. Um, just think about everything we're paying for in the big, beautiful new bill. There's a lot of money printing to be had. So let's just think, if you're a person and all you do, you don't invest, you just hold money, you're going to save in a savings account, money, and then you have a car mortgage, you're just debt, you're just fiat. As they print, you move further down that line, because as money gets pushed through the system, assets rise. And so without holding any assets, the wealth gap, it becomes a further divide for you. So what's actually happening in inflation is that the rich that own assets, those are inflating. The stock market is at all-time highs, gold, all-time highs, silver soaring, homes, all-time highs. Those who own assets right now, you are making leaps and bounds ahead of what, quote unquote, our Bureau of Labor and Statistics tell us, which no one believes that, right? Do we really believe inflation is what they tell us? Like, do you go to the grocery store like I do? Because I just went twice today and I'm like, what? And so everyone's having sticker shock and everyone's a little bit confused why. And I feel like I'm this person that's just like, this is why. This is the problem. If you keep doing this and you hold debt in fiat, you will get further behind. If you do not hold these assets, like, you're going to get further behind. And then everyone fights on here, which is incredible to me, because I'll have the gold people go, oh, it should only be gold, metals, like only that. You're crazy if you buy crypto. Crypto people saying you're crazy if you buy gold. Then we have like this infighting within crypto of, well, we know. And so I go, the entire world is getting uploaded onto the system. Oh, thank you. Like, we're talking about the fourth industrial revolution. We're talking about the entire world of assets that we know right now coming on chain on one of these projects. That's including gold. Like, I think so many people in the investing world, and this is something that I want to send my head through a wall. It can be everything. You can hold gold, you can hold Bitcoin, you can hold some other assets. We live in a world of and people fight like we live in a land of war. Like, it's Bitcoin or gold. It's and I'm like, it's the blockchain. It's everything tokenized and move faster. Stop fighting. Like, this is one of the most fun times to, unfortunately, like, if you know this is coming, it is exciting. And you hate to say that, because in these events in history, if you play your cards right, you're set. Like, you can make a lot of money. If you don't play this right, you're not gonna have options.
So, Brooke, for the average American who maybe has thousands of dollars in their savings account in fiat, do they actually notice the transition, or will the settlement asset always be fiat, but the actual way for institution payment or bank to bank or person to person, that actual movement of money, even though the bank accounts show fiat, but that actual transition into this new digital era, maybe this blockchain technology, what happens to the individuals that have thousands in their bank account? Is that something where they go, listen, you're going to have to transition into a stable coin, into a CBDC? Or is it something where the average person may not even notice, but the rails of which the money moves is what changes?
So I think it could be both. So I think that actually in this currency shift over, we have a chance that we actually go back on a gold standard.
Okay. Walk me
So
through that.
So I think it's possible, because this technology that they're about to implement into a new, faster, smarter system, as they implement that, it gives it a chance to do something to money that has made gold a very hard thing to keep as a something that you wouldn't want to depeg from. And so historically, what we see is a country going from metal, fiat, metal, fiat, metal, fiat. Well, we're in fiat. And so as we see fiat fade, now through tokenization, because we can tokenize gold and we can tokenize other commodities, and because this technology changes so many rules of the game, we can actually back a currency, start backing up debt, start revaluing assets, which Besson actually alludes to whenever he talks, which is very fascinating. He talks about monetizing US assets. And I think that that is one of the ways that he will do that. And I think that that will possibly be a shift in the stablecoin market to stablecoins being backed by bonds, but possibly also being backed by metal or gold or a basket of commodities, and kind of shifting the flow of money inadvertently through a pegged system in the background. And so it might be a smoother shift than we think. And people don't see that we're already in there. People don't see stablecoins as a play to save a failing system. Because, question, what backs up stablecoins? Bonds.
Treasuries, yes.
Yeah, treasury bonds. Okay. In a currency collapse, what happens? You see countries offloading debt. So they would offload US bonds onto the market at the exact same time that the US is printing bonds to print money for our debt, right? Right. Okay. So stable coins give another demand to a market that would otherwise be even more saturated in overflowing bonds. And so people are so surprised that institutions, like everyone's releasing stable coins. That is very actually a positive sign to me, that I think how it's not a positive sign. I think it shows me how they plan on shifting our system forward, which is very interesting. So we'll see how wrong or right I am. But the stable coin, people don't see that even the implementation of stable coins into the market is a play to save a failing currency system.
Yeah, I honestly think that stablecoins are really the Trojan horse to kind of prop the dollar back up. And we're kind of experiencing the same issues that we had in 1913, 1969, where you have rising inflation, the spending value of the dollar is almost eroded, as well as declining trust in the dollar globally. And now stablecoins, since they are backed by US debt, we're starting to look at BRICS nations or European nations kind of second guess stablecoins, and they say, do we really want to jump back into the same system where we had a centralized control of a global reserve currency, which is the US dollar? Are we going to adopt these stablecoins in theory, which we are backing back with the US debt? I think it is a Trojan horse in a sense. And I think that's why you're starting to see the UK kind of prefer tokenized deposits over stablecoins, and Russia kind of starting to become self-aware of what we are doing with digital assets in regards to stablecoins. You said that you have studied the rise and fall of civilizations. So I'd like to ask you, what similarities do you see between the past collapses and what we're kind of experiencing now?
So if you want to start with Rome, Rome is very similar to the United States in a way that they expanded in a very similar fashion. And it started with their coin clipping, which was probably our 1971, slowly getting off of that standard. And then you saw them try to overreach into different regions of the world. And so they started having, as they're printing this money away, because they're having to pay for all of these foreign wars that they're involved in, because they've gone and conquered all of these lands, and they have to pay for these things. This doesn't come with no cost, this conquest. And so whenever that happens off the back of debt, whenever you start clipping coinage, And whenever you start having a false form of money, what's interesting is you start getting a wealth divide. You start having infighting. And so, at the exact same time that Rome is getting involved in these foreign wars, they're rotting from the inside. People are fighting amongst themselves because poor are getting poorer, rich are getting richer. And you've heard of bread and circuses. Well, that's exactly what the government was doing. They were saying, here is, entertainment for their feeding, and so distracted. They're so distracted by trying to keep up and being entertained and being comfortable. They don't realize that literally every pillar of their society is crumbling. And you see that from a social level. You see that from the middle class basically getting hollowed out. The fact that they're a republic and power was centralizing again. Foreign wars, debt creation, all of the things. So, because think about it. Oh, is everyone paused? Because think about it. Oh, is everyone paused? Okay, so does that sound familiar?
Back up about 10 seconds, please.
Oh, okay. So does kind of what the picture that I set up of Rome and kind of as it started its fall, does that sound familiar? And so people, you can't really pinpoint a date that Rome fell, right? It's not like, and that's what people I think of whenever we say that there's a crash coming, a collapse happening. They don't realize they're already in it, and the storylines, their headlines, geopolitically, socially, their pocketbooks, the price tag at the store, the sentiment. Let's go back to the French Revolution. Marie Antoinette very much probably didn't say let them eat cake, but the sentiment of the poor were saying, how dare she? She's sitting up in her castle. Well, we're tired of this, and that's how revolutions happen. So if you can, unfortunately, that's where we're at. And you can't help but see, like, then you go back to World War One. It was very hard for me in history class to think, how could a shot heard around the world set off a global war? Well, I don't have to go back too far into recent headlines to what there are high tensions, and it just because something like that happened in America, you can see how it's having a geopolitical effect. And then you see just what's happening across the world. Nations are rising up against nations. This is what you see in collapse. This isn't what you see in good times.
So speaking of fragmentation, and I kind of just started to dive a little bit into this today, but the creation of the euro, I think from what I'm seeing is one of the greatest moves in monetary transitions. It was a move from fragmentation all around Europe, from their own individual currencies into a unified digital and physical currency system. So when the euro was created, it was called the Economic and Monetary Union, which led to the process and the creation of the euro as we know it today. And it was a single currency for many European countries. And the euro itself was officially introduced January 1st of 1999 as an electronic currency. And then it was actually pushed out in January 2022 for actual physical banknotes. That whole transition from natural currencies like the franc, the Deutsche Mark, and the lira to the euro is referred to the Eurozone launch or the euro transition. So what I would like to kind of dive into is what are the similarities of the euro kind of having that fragmentation all around Europe into becoming one unified digital and physical currency system? And is that something that we're kind of experiencing today in terms of digitization as well as unification of a currency system?
Yes. And so, in what is fascinating is at the same time that this technology can be individualized, it allows everything to connect and flow together. So I think it's interesting that you would mention the euro and when it was created. Unfortunately, when those countries gave up their sovereign currency, they gave up so much of their rights into the hands of overlords that then get to play with other interests, unfortunately. And this is what happens whenever you centralize any power into anyone's centralized hands. And so I think it's very interesting that then we see the UK break off from the euro and save their, well, try to save their pound, which is fascinating to see what's happening in the UK. And it's very kind of interesting, especially with the announcements and how aggressive they are getting with their digital dollar, which I think very shortly after they implement that digital dollar very fast, they get a digital currency and even a retail facing CBDC, which have fun. Sorry, like I am watching that kind of go, and I don't want that to come on our shores. And so anyway, you were mentioning the euro. Even geopolitically, the euro in many countries within the euro region, they are in trouble. Deutsche Bank is one of the worst banks on the face of the planet Earth. There is no way I would ever touch anything from them. It's interesting to watch their balance sheet, Deutsche Bank, and I keep track a pulse on a few of the banks. Of course, I keep an eye on what happens in Basel and at the BIS. And of course, what our friend Christine Lagarde has to say. And she's moving the euro very, very fast to this new system. And so Europe is marching full steam ahead. And we are very, very soon. Oh, thank you, Jaydan. I just saw you. Hi. We are marching very, very fast globally, and we're watching the UK and a few other Asian countries kind of lead the way. We need to be watching them, learning from them, because when it comes to our shores, we need to see where they went wrong and where they went right, and where we can kind of hold our government accountable. So good luck, the EU. Good
So
luck,
do you,
UK.
Brooke, do you think that this next shift with CBDCs and tokenized systems is kind of the same playbook that Europe had with the euro, but now on a global scale?
Yes, yeah, so just in this I see this on so many different levels, and so it's like, what level do you want me to pack the progression of centralized power? And then, how esoteric do you want me to get? Because I've had to open up my ethics books and ask myself, can I even invest in the system that's up and coming? Because in really, whenever I read my good book and what it says, and then I hear people who are non-believing and do not read the good book, and they're saying essentially the same things. It really has me looking at this on a bunch of different levels. And so, yes, when you like very much like you see the European come together, a lot of different nation states, bunch of different assets, the euro, the currency. If you travel to Europe, you don't have to exchange across many of the euro nations because you have the euro. And that's convenient and all, but again, that comes at a cost sovereignly, and we're seeing that as, unfortunately, the war breaks out between Ukraine and so as we march forward, what happens and what, unfortunately, a lot of things tell me is that we march closer towards a more centralized system, and it looks very decentralized in nature, but in essence it's really not, because behind the scenes it's kind of that all-seeing eye, if you will. So Very interesting times. There might actually come a time that I have to say, I can no longer participate in a system like this, and the consequences might be as they might have to be with that. Or, or wow, thank you, Galaxy. Or maybe we have options, and so I see investing in this technology as having options to come, possibly.
So before we jump into what the future becomes, the New World Order and the Great Reset,
Mm.
I'd like to take one last look at history and kind of compare it to current day. What lessons can we take from how the euro changed everyday lives for many European countries and apply that to what is coming next with digital currencies?
Well, we have to be very, very careful what we think we're giving up and what we think we're not.
Okay.
Because think about what happened in Greece, okay? Greece, their currency collapsed. How long ago was that? 2000, was that 20, was that 17? Or was that, man, it takes one bad apple to bring everything down. And so as we march closer and closer to, I think that the powers that be want to onboard us onto a global centralized system. I think that if we're not careful and if we don't play it right here in America, we are just as far down. I'm hoping, at least for my generation's sake, like as far as I go and as far as like my children's go, I don't know about my grandchildren, but I'm hoping like between us educating the public and educating my children that we don't see this coming, like we don't see a system like the EU. But it's interesting because if you look at this geopolitically, like let's look at the wars. Sorry if I'll say that. Let's look at Russia and Ukraine. And whenever we kicked Russia off the SWIFT system, that was a signal to the world to be like, I don't really trust these guys over here. And whenever the biggest mistake, because one of the only things that allows the dollar and us to behave like we can is trust in our currency system. So the fact that the Biden administration weaponized the dollar, that was a signal to the rest of the world to say, bet. And so it's interesting that Russia's, talking about America's new system. Well, we've been watching them set up their new system. And so it's a possibility that in this reset, because of this technology, that because it changes the rules of how money and geopolitics have derived our geopolitical system, it shifts our geopolitical system. It solves what's called the Triffin dilemma, why we even need a world reserve currency. It shifts, and so it's possible that two financial systems come out of this system. So we could have a BRICS system running simultaneously with a westernized system, and then treaties between those two systems flowing together between a DAO and smart contracts, and all because we have this what's called a trustless system. Because now I don't necessarily have to trust an intermediary bank. I can trust code. And so I can have, two financial systems running simultaneously while also transacting between each other, because I no longer have to. I can be a country that could absolutely not trust another country, but I can look at the code that we run off of and be like, okay, great. I don't have to love you. I don't have to be your best friend. I don't necessarily have to trust you. I can trust the code. So that changes a lot when you talk about what happens with a global financial system and the options that other countries have had that they've never had before. So you see the BRICS system, they have the equivalent of their IMF. They have what's called the New Development Bank, and that's ran by the sister of the old Iraqi, I think is the president currently. His sister runs that bank. And so you also see them building solutions off of a lot of these open protocols. And so To me, right now, I am seeing the future as possibly a two-tiered system, which, we could have multiple reserve currencies running at the same time. We could have two simultaneous world reserve currencies running at the same time. We can there is talk about digitizing what's called the SDR. That's called a savings and drawings, right? And making that into an ESDR. And
Yep.
so we could even have a world reserve pool of assets of which that global system runs off of. And Bitcoin might be something that backs that. Gold can back that at the same time. Different. What's interesting, that we talk about that, if you are a country and you can pull all your money together like this, then it becomes, how much of a stake do you have in this system? So who knows? It'll be a very interesting future. And I'm very fascinated on an academic level on how it all shakes out. So,
It was so interesting because when I had jumped on episode 9 of the sit down with Apex Crypto Consulting, one of his deep dive research was the International Monetary Fund's trying to come up with the special drawing rights, the SDR, in 1969. And he says that the reasons for the SDR failing was that they had one, a lack of multitude of use cases as well as liquidity. So he starts to dive into the ESDRs, the electronic special drawing rights, and how he believes that it's actually Ripple that can actually jump in for the ESDR. In terms
yeah,
of the BRICS nations, right? BRICS stands for Brazil, Russia, China, South Africa, Brazil, Russia,
India.
India, China, South Africa. But there are also 11 countries that have also joined the BRICS nations since 2024 and 2025. And essentially, a lot of these countries, they don't necessarily trust each other. But what they do know is that they can't trust the United States to be the global reserve currency. We know that the BRICS nations has been exploring DLT. These nations don't necessarily need to trust one another as long as they have an embedded code where they can actually trust that code and then that currency can actually function the way that it was supposed to be intended to. Do you have any up-to-date research as to what is going on with the BRICS expansion? And are they still driving towards that depegging from the US dollar?
Well, I thought we would see a lot less of it whenever we saw Trump come into power, because one of the first things that he said when he came was, "You better not jump off of the dollar or we're going to sanction your butt," is what he was saying. He's playing hardball. He understands what's at stake. He really does. And nothing tells me that he doesn't understand that, as far because he's really pushing. He just made a statement the other day that said crypto will be the thing that keeps the dollar dominant, which is a theory I had 4 years ago. And so you have to think of how how would crypto keep the dollar dominant?
I
And
believe
so if
stablecoins.
and so why would you, unless it's coming under attack, and why would you make it so? It's very interesting whenever you hear, your president say that, because it signals to me you wouldn't have to say that if there wasn't an alternative or there wasn't a competition. And so you see, I haven't dug into if there's been any more leaps and bounds. There for a while there was like months and months that there were new deals going on outside of the dollar. And people don't realize, well, I mean, I hear this all the time. There's so much dollar derived debt. It's the most it is. The dollar is still the most widely used, yes. But little by little, that is stopping to be the case. Little by little, until all at once. Okay? That's how some of these things happen. So,
It was
yeah.
so interesting because when I was paying attention to what the BRICS was doing under the last administration, I didn't hear a word of it. And when President Trump came in, he addressed it, and I thought, "Wow, this is great." And I honestly, I really haven't dug into much of the recent development of the BRICS nations. I'm sure that they're still
Yes.
expanding, but to what degree, I'm not so sure. But I'd like to jump a little bit into something that probably many of us are aware about, and it is the New World Order and the Great Reset. So many people brush that off as a conspiracy, but when the World Economic Forum literally writes about the Great Reset, you can't pretend that it's not coming or it's not happening.
Right.
How do you define the New World Order, and what does that actually mean to you?
So people want to get really conspiratorial whenever they hear New World Order. It's nothing conspiratorial, it's really history. The last upheaval that we saw in the world order was World War II and it, the Bretton Woods creation coming off the back of that because you watched England, and England's a very interesting historical case because you watched England didn't fall overnight. And it wasn't in the headlines. England all of a sudden becomes no longer the world reserve currency and now it's the dollar. No, that very quietly took place with the Bretton Woods creation. The UK, they were heavily indebted because they had just had two world wars. They, just like Rome, they had, conquered a lot of the world, and a lot of that world went to war. And so they, and before that, they had started the slide down from losing that position, which is what led into these wars. We had the Weimar Republic right before, which was an inflationary crisis, which led us to a lot of the consequences of our Second World War. And so the Second World War was a new world order. We saw Great Britain fall off as the dominant power, and we saw the United States rise to dominance through the monetary system, through the reserve currency of the world. So what's interesting is, and here is another reason why I think gold might play a role in this new financial system, is part of my research led me down the rabbit hole of Fort Knox. And if we have the amount of gold that we have reported there, do you want to guess at what that gold is valued at?
No, I don't. I don't know.
Okay. Well, right now, the market price of gold is at an all-time high, and the chat can possibly help us, but it's around like $3,600. It's like it's at an all-time high. Yeah, $40. So I'm on here saying this a lot. You're right, Solemn Spartan. It's around $42 the last time I checked. That is the value on the books that we quote unquote have of gold in Fort Knox is valued at around $42. Whenever what
Why is that?
Let's play why would we do that? Could we strategically use that right now? Is there anything in our history, like let's think 1933, what did we do? Do you know what happened in 1933?
World War?
No, so this is an event that happened before World War, but we made it illegal to own gold. And we had the Americans had to sell their gold at fair market value price back to the government because they made it illegal to own. They revalue gold and then and then sold it back onto the market as that. That's basically. Oh, thank you, Bullish Babe. Love you, girl. Gorgeous. She's so beautiful and smart. She's awesome. Go follow her. So, yeah. They bought back the gold. They made it illegal for us to own. That's a little bit of piece of history that is not talked about a lot. So when I came across that bit of research that our Fort Knox gold was valued at just $42, and you see historically, I am watching metals happen. Like if Brooke is crazy or isn't all that crazy, and there is a financial crisis happening, gold and silver are performing exactly how they historically should. And it's shocking that so then you hear Besant, okay? Besant then says, we're going to monetize our assets, the United States assets. Well, how are they going to do that? Well, I think I know.
Is it tokenizing it?
Yeah, I think they're going to tokenize the gold in Fort Knox. I think that they're going to revalue it. I think that market price right now is good enough, but who knows?
What would be the benefit for having such a drastic change with the actual market value of the gold in Fort Knox? What's the benefit?
Because think about our debt burden. This is how debt jubilees can essentially happen is you inflate your debt away via the assets that you have inflated away, and then you shift the money system back onto it.
Wow.
That's how you shift a money system.
Wow. That's crazy. Do you think that this has been a plan that's been in motion for decades?
So what's that? Yes. So I think oh, it's October. It's spooky
It's
month.
spooky season, baby.
Spooky season, fall, sweater weather. It's coming. I love fall. I love fall. It's fall, y'all. Oh yeah. Thank you, Koozie. I'm your typical white girl. It's pumpkin spice latte season, ladies. Let's get our. But unfortunately, you know what sucks? I'm this person, like whenever, like it's plaid season, but whenever I wear my plaid, it looks like I just might as well be like lugging an axle. Girls look so cute in it, and then I feel like I actually look like a lumberjack. But
Well,
I try.
Cryptocurrency does wear the plaid skirt with the big high brown boots to the kneecaps. So, I mean, we're fully aware of how the white girl is dressed in the autumn
Pearl
season.
snaps. Any pearl?
Yeah, even the buckles on the boots, everything, is pretty cute. But
Yeah. So yeah, I own a farm, so I'm kind of Western myself. But yeah, what were we talking about?
we were talking about how this was kind of something that has been premeditated.
Yes, it's
In
spooky
motion for
season.
decades.
So what's so interesting, if you read the white paper, the Bitcoin white paper, you see that they allude to the reason of needing a better form of money. That came in 2009, right after the financial crisis, which I find very fascinating. So this is my conspiracy theory. I believe that they knew that our financial system died at that time, and they have spent the time since in the background of building the financial rails to the new system. And that so when it officially, like, they can't hide it anymore, and we have to shift the system, because they will never blame debt. Here's the thing, our history books will not blame debt for being the reason. They will blame a world war, they will blame civil wars, they will blame a pandemic, they will blame whatever it is besides their own debasing of a currency and then printing it into oblivion. They will do something to blame it on. And so that is where I, unfortunately, that's where we're marching. That is what is setting up on the chessboard. And so what happens next? I'm just crossing my fingers and saying some prayers. And if we get to live past the other side, it looks very hopeful. So
What is the connection between a financial collapse and the consolidation of global power?
very well, it's the same thing. Each time you see countries more and more, well, you see a we interesting, because you see cycles. And now, as I'm kind of like thinking about that question, you see countries actually centralizing and then decentralizing, centralizing and decentralizing. We're actually geopolitically in a decentralizing type of event, because you have these countries going, I don't want to be a part of this one, I want to separate from this one, we're going to war with this one, we want to take this one. Hard. So what's interesting is, and then we see the EU also, and then we had Brexit. So we are actually watching a system kind of decentralizing from each other, all while also kind of centralizing their systems all at the same time. Cool. I don't know. I'm going to be writing the history book as we go. So I'm analyzing kind of things as we
This
go
time,
along.
Brooke, could this time even be different for the United States when you're watching the collapse of the global reserve currency, as well as the global power, is this time really different for the United States with the ushering of tokenized assets and CBDCs? Or, like we said earlier, is stablecoins backing the US debt really the Trojan horse to keep the dollar the global power as well as the reserve?
Both things can be true at once.
Okay.
Both. Yeah, that will happen simultaneously, and that's all part of the plan. And so that's essentially how you could tokenize your financial your currency as a commodity backed system is through your stablecoin system, or however we structure the new Federal Reserve, because we might have a financial crisis to the tune of, oh, they got to revalue gold again, Fort Knox,
So would this be the
it's
first time
yeah.
where we've had a shift in a financial system, a financial collapse, where the prior global power of the world remains in power?
Well, okay. This is where we can. How far down that rabbit hole do I
Gotcha.
want to go? Have we actually has how much? Okay. Ha, has the power actually changed? And is the United States actually at the top, or did the power and the same people just shifted around?
I would say 1913 was really the key indication for the United States to become the global power, and simply probably just because of the world reserve currency. It's been more than 100 years. I think that we are experiencing a shift in our financial system. I'm just
Well,
wondering.
let me take you through some kind of like another level of it. And okay, so whenever we go back to the medieval times, who was the world reserve currency during a lot of that? You have the Catholic Church, which was centralized in the Vatican. Okay, and then you had Vatican ruled that they were kind of the world central bank at that time. And so the Vatican kind of controlled the monetary system. And then you have that shift very much Protestantly with that Reformation, that whole thing happens, of course, because of debt at the center. And so then you have it shift, back up to the UK. And so you have the city of London. You have 1 square mile of that, which then rose to power, became the centralized power. And then we had the American Revolution. And there's pieces of history that are very fascinating when you go down the monetary history. And I believe reading a few of Franklin's journal entries and going into some of the meetings he had in a cafe in Paris, that there were other agreements that were happening behind the American Revolution, and that was also a shifting of a financial system. And so that is why you see our global financial system and allies very much centered around the same people. And so it really went from the Vatican to London to DC, which is interesting. DC is District of Columbia, it's a separate thing.
Right.
And so then, of course, we have our Federal Reserve, which we can also track back to the UK and people and families. It's like, where do you want me to start with the Medicis and the Roman Catholic Church? Like it goes through very extensive history. But it's my opinion that it's not necessarily that, yes, America is at the top, but the ownership of the system are the same people that we've had for a while.
Very interesting. Rothschilds, Rockefellers.
They even have bosses.
They
So
have
I'll
bosses.
leave it there. Oh,
Hmm. That's crazy. That's definitely a crazy one. I don't think I've dug too deep into that rabbit hole. I'm over at Rockefeller Center watching the ice skaters saying, "This guy, he created everything." Little do I know that he's got strings attached to his back. Wow. I'll dive into that one.
yeah. That would be a Discord call. I can.
It's gonna have to be a Discord call because I'm not really interested in having this interview shut down too early. Um,
Yeah, there's some things that I've had to go.
can
That's
we
how
can
it.
we can we jump a little bit into um, your own personal beliefs? You are an advocacy for self-reliance. whether that comes to food, education, safety, freedom. You believe that these are things that people should reclaim. These are things that we should pass down generation to generation, and that power belongs in we the people rather than the government to provide that. And
Yep.
that's such a powerful mindset shift. I'd like to ask you, why do you believe that so many people are dependent on the government systems, and do they even know that they're broken, that these systems are broken? How did we get to a point where people are so dependent on these systems
Well,
rather than self-reliant?
that is what, well, they put you on a debt system. So the best way, and scripture is very clear on this, it's fascinating. It says the debtor is always slave to the lender. So whenever you are a financial system, whoever owns that, and you peg your currency, you monetize your debt, meaning you make debt your form of currency. What does that make us? Debt slaves.
Slaves.
Congratulate. And whenever you put, no one puts it like that. You know, I think that if our, it's for a reason.
I get in
Imagine
trouble so much because I call everyone a good little slave.
it's not to
It's
be
so true.
people. Okay, and here's the thing. Here's where, so it's been a very hard road for me because and I am for self-reliance. I've been trying to empower people to take back the power in their hands. So just this idea of a financial system failing didn't just come to me overnight, and I'm an alarmist and I'm a doomsayer. This is years and years of study, and this is years of putting my money where my mouth is, because in 2018 is when I built our homestead. And for me, it was this inner feeling of this is going to come into use. And I was studying the Great Depression at that time, which is, you know, one of these debt cycles. And I grew up in Southwest Kansas, and my elders were the children of the Great Depression. And the Great Depression specifically was ultra hard on Southwest Kansas because that was like the center of the Dust Bowl. So we're talking about really hard conditions that, you know, the old people who I sat next to at a church would talk about. And so they would die off, and I would go to their funerals and we would hear stories. And I remember one man saying that they it was, of course, like a tale of two cities almost kind of story. It was the worst of times, but it was the best of times. They talked about how they had very little, but they had so much because they had each other. And so when I thought about, you know, I think of my farm as an inflation hedge. And unfortunately, I've been, that has come into utilization. So call me crazy if you want to. I've been stalked across this app saying I'm a doomsdayer, yada, yada. Guess what? I'm feeding people and kind of trying to close the margin for people that are falling on hard times, because we have people who are becoming unemployed. We're entering a very rough employment cycle. And so people are already suffering because of unemployment, but also an environment of hyperinflation. I think we're headed into, if just inflation right now. So, man, we can do this. I just want everyone should be thinking about what they can do, because you don't have to do it all. Like, you don't have to build a whole homestead. Like, can you have a few backyard chickens? Can you collect eggs? Can you help them? You know, who doesn't like getting like farm fresh eggs? Like, go meet your neighbors with it. Create, maybe your neighbor is an awesome, I cannot garden. I would rather feed a cow all day than to pull a weed from a garden. Please don't make me do it. Like, but I have gardeners, and so I can be like, here's my eggs, here's my meat. Can I have some vegetables? And so, you know, we talk about decentralization. We need to talk about decentralizing our, you know, our food, like how we depend on this system. And we need to be very, very careful about what we give to the system.
It's so funny, as a young man from New York, this whole idea of a homestead is so foreign to me. But this is ultimately my end goal. It's to have hundreds of acres, thousands of chickens, goats.
You don't want thousands. You
Oh,
don't
well,
want
just
thousands.
self-sufficiency is really what I want.
Yes,
I want the
yes.
solar panels. I want the rainwater collection, the food, total dependency on the family rather than the government. With that being
Well,
said,
make sure you bring in the community with that, because it really, you can't be, it's very hard to be self-reliant. And as I've gone down the prepping road through all of this, because you go down through some dark corners. And so, when we have plans, but it's very hard to plan for everything. And what's interesting is people have lost a sense of community. And so even though these are really, really hard times, man, this could be an opportunity that you can really start community within communities. And people are lonely out there. Like, times are hard, but if we can all be little lights, we can do this. And it can be an actual, like, we can have options. So if the government comes and says, goodness, Braylar, we want to institute this, they can say, nah, we have options and you can negotiate with us. So, but I feel like that falls on deaf ears a lot. People, I don't know about you, but people aren't very receptive to me in my actual physical life. They hear this stuff, and even though they feel it, they don't want to think that the system is failing. They'll fight tooth and nail to keep it. Oklahoma's last in education. We went from like 49th to 50th, and I was like, oh no, please don't. And then we went from like, I'm like, we're last in a system that already sucks. Like, what are we actually fighting to keep? And so we need to have that conversation too as we're meeting our communities, is how do we want the future to look?
what's the real danger of depending on the same system that is collapsing?
Do you want to be in a breadline? The last place I want to be is in a breadline in one of these
Just a little
things.
more soup, sir.
Just, can I have some more?
Just a little more.
Can I have some more? And as and people think that government is the answer to everything. They are not. They are absolutely the source of the problem, and they have the monopoly on the issues. Like, we are the answer. Our founding, thank you guys so much, whoever sent this. My goodness, I'm so bad at like keeping track because I just yap. Thank you everyone in the chat. And I'm ADHD AF, and so I can't watch chat and talk because I could not get through one sentence ever. So thank you, chat. Um, Speaking of ADHD, what was I talking about?
Dependency on the government, on the same
Yeah.
system that's actually collapsing.
Yes, and so I understand people, and you want to take care of other people. Via the government is not the way to do that.
Yeah.
Take care of other people through, and that's very hard right now, but through you, and really start holding institutions accountable, and we are creative. Like, start thinking of creative ways to not be a pawn in their system. Think of every opposite way to not have that. If something historical were to happen in your country, learn from your history. What gives you the most margin? Try not to go into further debt. There are so many things I will cut and that I will do. I will wear so many holy shirts. Like, there's things that I will not put on credit. Like, there's those type of decisions that if you make smart ones, you can come out on this really well.
So Brooke, how do we educate people to become self-reliant again in such a digital age?
Well, I thought it was very interesting, and I'll quote, actually, it's the creator of XPR, the Marshall Hayner. I thought he had a very interesting post the other day on X. He said, I think we should have a KYG. We have a KYC, know your customer. Realize that this technology, and this is, I'm giving a presentation this week, and this is something I want to tell them. Technology is a tool. The very thing that we are very afraid that can control us, we have to push back and say, we can control you. Our Constitution, our constitutional republic here, we are not a democracy. We are a constitutional republic. It's a very critical difference because the majority does not get to rule over our republic rights. Like, that's the difference between a democracy and a constitutional republic. So I want to be very, very firm on that. So as a people, we have to realize that this is an opportunity that we can get to know our government. We can tokenize everything that they spend. We can track it. You can have your private ledger, sure, but let's go through a DAO possibly of elected people who, there just has to be a better, okay, let me put it this way. There's a better accountability system that if we are not careful, will absolutely be up our butts controlling our every single effing move. Look to the UK, digital IDs, that's where you're going. Have fun getting linked to a social credit score. Have fun getting your groceries limited at the okay, America, okay? Listen. Listen to me. I'm like going
just
crazy.
Going, David.
Listen to me if we don't get this right. Because I'm like, there's something that, the tinfoil hat is that's how I look to my family, but it's real. It's at our doorstep. Okay. Chance. We can know our government. We can hold them accountable. Our Constitution was a document that it gave us a contract of how our government was to handle us. They answer to us. This system allows us to see what's behind the curtain. And it's time that we demand it, and it's time that we hold them accountable. We have a system that we can do it. When this comes knocking on our doorstep, we must educate our public and push for these really upfront rights. I'm really hoping that we get a digital declaration of independence that we can be the government, because think about it. Okay, I understand digital IDs, very efficient. There is a very good use case to digital IDs. It'd be nice to just have it would. However, I want to own that information.
Yeah, they sell it more convenience. Meanwhile, it's another open gate to program your money.
Yes. So here's I don't want to get political, but if we're going to hold our officials accountable, I'm just going to call them out. Trump has called upon Palantir to if you know literature, do you know what Palantir is based off of?
I know the company pretty well, but I don't know what the name originates from.
He's a big fan of Tolkien and Lord of the Rings. And we're talking the all-seeing eye.
Lord of the Rings? Mm-hmm. I've actually never seen that, or Star Wars, or Harry Potter's. I'm not into that, but the all-seeing eye, sure, yeah.
Here's the thing, whenever you're looking... So if you want to get into the mind of a lot of these creators, go to who they read and then look at the inspiration of the companies that they name and what they try to do, and where this all goes paints a very specific picture for you. We have to be careful that when the United States gets a digital ID, that we demand that we own the information on that, and then we give permission to our government as to what they can and cannot see, or maybe there's an agreement as to what they can and cannot see, and then they can subpoena us or something like that, via this. But we got to be very, very careful coming up, and we have to start having these conversations and educating the voting public so we can start not tracking down those literary consequences.
So, Brooke, if these politicians, which I honestly believe are just puppets of the lobbyists, the special interest groups, the super PACs, if these politicians are puppets, why would they ever vote into a system where it takes away that power from those who have it to the people? Why would this new digital age ever be open source, where people can actually take a look at what the government is spending and hold them accountable? why would they ever not issue digital identities where you actually have ownership of your data, which in America we don't? Why would they ever vote in these policies, which theoretically is good for the people? That's personal sovereignty, personal freedom. But the people who have the powers now, why would they ever vote into a system and a technology that takes it away and gives it to the people?
They're not going to unless we demand it. And the plan was, so like, I, when you read the agenda of the administration that didn't make it, it was very clear the plan that they had. We would not have had probably a stable coin system. The Biden administration and really we can call the Harris administration, the deep state that controls them, they really wanted a like a CBDC more
Retail
plus system.
CBDC?
Hmm.
Okay.
Even though that was, they knew that would be less of a possibility, but they were going to spend like, if the election had gone any other way, we would have marched dangerously close to something like that. I still think it's kind of like, what kind of flavor of it do you want? Is it chocolate, vanilla? It's the ice cream's poo poo. But when it comes to this, so yeah, we'll see.
Do you, and I think that you and me are very aligned with this, but we are so well informed as to the system that is coming. And of course, you could take a look at history and it can help you be well informed for what is to come. But you find a purpose in your education through this community to kind of warn them that there are a lot of benefits to it. But with that, if things do not go in the right way, there is a lot of control and oppression and bad times that can come with it. Walk me a little bit through what is your goal as well as your education to, even though we are going into this digital era and a lot of us will become profitable from it, but there's also that dark side to everything where it is a little bit more of that strangle on your personal sovereignty.
It is. And so that's whenever I say, like, there might be a point in the future that I have to make different decisions. So there's a bunch of us who talk about buying an island together and bailing down if this all goes down here. Having options in events like this is the best thing that you can do. For me, it's all encompassing. I'm watching my headlines, and again, the tech, when they talk about technocrats and what's coming, people, please figure out where you're at, even in the cosmos, and what this all means. Because I said, like, I'm a macro I'm a macro person, but I can go from macro to micro. And whenever I study cycles, and what I am seeing on a bigger picture, it's very fascinating because ever since the Tower of Babel, like however you want to see that event or historically, regardless, here's how the world is set up. It's set up in siloed systems. All technology and science is trying to do is to get back to a singularity. And so when you have the Tower of Babel, and the story there is they had a new technology in a form of a new brick that they were going to use to erect a tower to heaven to become equals with God. And they all spoke the same language. And God looks down upon them and says, if they speak the same language, they will be capable of anything. So he confused their languages and scattered them across the nations. So ever since then, or whatever you want to call then, regardless, here's how our world's set up. Everyone speaks a different language. Well, whenever we talk about this technology, we talk about if you're developing, I'll ask you, what language do you speak? Okay. Now, when you talk about open protocol, sure, this is open protocol and it all speaks different languages, but we talk about how all of this is interoperable. So now we have a money language system that even though it speaks different languages, and we have and so currency, this is where I get really sciencey. Like, I consider myself a currency scientist, but if you were to think about language, money is a language, okay? Each person's currency that they're in is a language of an essence of how much energy they put into the system and what energy they get back. It's a form of a language. Now that language is shifting. And this language, because other countries' languages, money, couldn't talk between each other. Now the system of money, even though it speaks different languages, it can be its own currency. It can be interoperable. So even though we're not speaking the same language, we can speak separate languages, but all those languages are able to communicate with each other in the form of money, which is like what does that mean to the cosmos? It's actually a really big concept, and it breaks barriers in human history, millennial history, that an opportunity that hasn't been here before. And then when you meet that with AI, like so like AI is crypto is like AI's money. And so whenever you merge all of those things together, the ecosystem gets rather large. Like think about everything now that we can do through AI, and think about tokenizing data. Okay, we talk about how we talk about or people talk about market cap, and there's not that much money that can make the system and their assets rise so high. Within mind, all they have in mind right now is the system that we have right now, the stock market that we have right now, the retail that we have right now,
Anything
the
that's
assets
liquid,
that we
that's it. Anything
that's
liquid,
all.
that's all.
Nothing's changing. They haven't heard how TradFi and DeFi are coming together to create brand new value that's locked up. Like that creates brand new economy. Whenever you're talking about a fourth industrial revolution, like right now, one of my favorite things to do is to think of use cases and build. If you're an entrepreneur, you should be looking at how, like, you might be investing into the system and it's doing this and that. You need to be looking at how your business can lock into the technology and skirt the competition and automate on this, and maybe come up with your own business idea, because the technology unlocks so much commerce out there. Like people don't realize how much opportunity this unlocks and the system it unlocks, and like how big that can actually get. So think about this. Like, let's just say I'm at a data center and I'm like, what if I could tokenize this data? Well, what if I could use this AI to track the data? I could use this protocol to tokenize the data. And then let's say this institution needs this data. Perfect. I have a subset. What information do you need? Let me spin it up. Here, you can buy it. Like I can now I can now value or have another asset via data that I sell. Like, I don't know, like what do you want to talk, like what do you want to create? Like there's so much pessimism. I know I just got done talking about a world currency collapse, a monetary collapse, a new one coming. There, like, if you know that this is like I'm already to that stage. Like this is in I'm watching, this unfold. And this is just like check marking, like how right or wrong. Unfortunately, it's getting a little scary for me. However, my hope, like I'm so hopeful for my future. Like I'm very like the things that I'm building on these protocols and the ideas and the people who I'm getting to meet and build them with, it is so much fun, and there's so much opportunity, and there's so many smart people here. Here's another thing. If we could stop freaking fighting, there are so many brilliant ideas. There's so many things that if we came together, so many of us have this technology solves so many problems, and we all have so many problems. Maybe some of our problems are each other's problems, or maybe we have a dream of a better future and we know this technology and we're all so smart. Like, what if we came together and we're complaining about education? What if you're a teacher and you decentralize the education system via AI, and did all your accounting on one of these protocols? What if we overhaul the insurance agency because we can now derive value off of health and incentivize health and use incentivization of money in a positive way. And because our healthcare system is failing. What are the problems there? And what can we build? Because this is my area of expertise. What can you build? What problems can you solve? Yeah, it's the time to do that thing.
I think the possibilities for what protocols you can actually develop are almost infinite and endless. And every corporation, every financial institution will kind of develop their own means of which they can make their own internal process and their own internal system function better. But it also is the same time where you can actually collect value from these companies into an ecosystem, right? When you look at the stock of a company, it's essentially just the profits that the company has made over the years. Now, when you look at Amazon, if you were able to capture the value of all the data that Amazon collects, capture the value of all of the time and all of the time and the deliveries that the drivers are actually out on the road, all of the boxes that they're taking, all of the P2P payments, all the B2B payments, all of the e-commerce that Amazon is collecting. If you were able to take the operations of Amazon and take that and actually apply it into a token or to an ecosystem, it's almost revolutionary because you were never able to capture the value of the internal operations of a company before. The only way you were ever able to have a valuation of a company was simply just the stock price of the company, but that doesn't necessarily reflect anything to do with any of the data, any of the deliveries, nothing. It just has to do with the profit of the company. So it's almost the first time in history where every internal process of a company, whether it's the payments, the data, the deliveries, the e-commerce, the P2P, the B2B, all of that can actually be captured into an ecosystem and have a representation of a token of how the internal function is actually operating. I think that it is as exciting as it is. It also gets to a point where it's like a complete, like you're saying, it's the fourth industrial revolution. It's a systematic evolution of bringing value onto an ecosystem. And as holders, we're actually able to own and to participate in this ecosystem where you can actually be on the same platform as Walmart or as Google or as IBM. It's also the same time in history where you're able to have multitudes of banks, multitude of enterprises, multitude of different data points, multitude of smart contracts, anything of everything, all condensed into one particular rail. And it's so exciting.
Well, yeah, and so not just one particular, like a bunch of different rails, right?
Yes.
That connect together, and that's what's lost. Like, people think I only talk about XRP, which I don't know how many times I've been like, the future's multi-chain, it can't do it all. Cool. Okay, so and then I talk about Metcalfe's law, and people think I only think of Metcalfe's law and that network effect and these ecosystems just in XRP. No, XRP will have its ecosystem, Bitcoin has Ethereum has its ecosystem, this has its ecosystem. Because it's interoperable, it can flow together, and it creates a network effect of network effects.
Yes.
And so then it creates this separate asset class, and that's missed on so many people.
Yeah.
And so it creates a different market. And this is because again, economists and all, they don't realize how this is actually going to change economy. This will shift how there's the economic theories, and we actually, our Federal Reserve is full of PhDs that I like to say they don't know whether to wind their butt or to scratch their watch. They don't know what the F they're doing. There are so many people who are PhD economists. They are lost at they don't understand the system that we have now. Okay, there's theories based off of what we have now. There's going to be new economic theories and how these things behave and as to why that we will be discovering as we go along. And one of the things that I think is going to be new is going to be this new ecosystem of which, things behave very differently. We will have to see academically how those things behave and then form our different theories off of those. But then again, I only talk about people or talk to people on here who know this, and only this is happening, and this is how it works, and it's only going to be how it works. And I think that that changes very soon. So
So this is where your story gets interesting because even though you warn people about the system, you're still investing in digital assets as well as property. So how do you personally reconcile investing into a system that you believe is maybe not the best long term for personal sovereignty and freedom? Because I experienced the same thing. I asked myself, even though I have the knowledge of it and I think that we could become profitable, do I think that it's the best thing for us? Probably not. So how do you reconcile with that?
I plan to start my talk this week this way, that I, just because I talk about this and I research this, does not mean that I absolutely, oh, there's a dragon, that's cool. That doesn't mean that this is where I want this to go. Oh,
It's a super hot fire.
I had to do that. So just because I researched this and I know about this, that does not mean, thank you, whoever did that. That does not mean that I want this to happen. I would have been, let's reverse history. Let's freeze it in the 90s, okay? I really like the 90s were fun. And so just because I talk about this, I invest in it, that does not mean I don't have reservation about it. So I took out my ethics book, and what I determined is because we have a debt-based system, we're already a part of an evil system, okay? The debtor is already slave to the lender. I personally believe that that is kind of how it has enslaved the people, and the dark entities use debt. So you're already a part of it. So what I don't want is I don't want to not have options. So I think of buckets. So like my homestead, if I have to make that decision of I'm not going to do this, can I feed myself? Can I feed, if I'm allowed to continue life on, do I have community that's going to be making the same decision? Yes. And we're talking about those things. We really are. Like, these are discussions I'm having with people who are like-minded. And I've been finding these throughout, the 5 years I've been here. Some people run away from me going, you're crazy. And then other people lean in and they're like, what? And there's a bunch of us coming together. So, I don't think that, we're going to have the future that we're going to create. And so my goal is to create the future and inspire other people to create the future they want to see using like what they are knowledgeable about and then going and making it. And yes, this other stuff is happening, but can we build other options? Can we build better options? Can we shift the system ourselves? Can we raise the frequency ourselves? I think, man, sometimes I'm on this app and I'm like, there's no hope. Some of you really suck. I'm going to say that. Like, so much negativity. I don't have time for that. The world, it's not a time for anything else to be talked about in terms of fighting and infighting, except for where do we go from here and what do we want this to look like? And it starts with us, one, how we treat each other. And two, how we think and how we build and how we imagine our future. And it really all depends on that, because there's agendas who are really fighting and trying to herd us like cattle. And if we don't have options, that's exactly where they take us. That's exactly where history shows us they take us. So interesting times, people.
Your perspective is so refreshing, but I think that you honestly are staying true and maintaining this level of reality, but also being prepared for what is to come. If this next phase is almost inevitable, how can people invest into it wisely while maintaining their values?
Well, again, this technology is just a tool. A brick is a tool. You can send it through someone's window, or you could build a house with it, with a lot of them. Technology is a tool. Again, that's why I said the power, these are open protocols. And so I'm talking to, like, education is in disarray in my state in Oklahoma. And I have knowledge about, I'm not a teacher, but my kids are in school and I want a better education system. And so people like try to run away from me, but I'm trying to like help influence people to come up with better ideas. So whether it's that teacher that is so sick of being a part of that stupid system, and if we are so sick of it, then how do we build this better? And if my state's education system is in such disarray, why don't I get together with a really like a developer and a teacher, and how do we like how do we use all of this technology and what's on our hands to, one, take the power back, and to solve problems within our society that can make it better. Now that's the hope that we have, and that's one of the only reasons that I feel like I can ethically invest in it still, is because I build on it. I'm thinking and trying to collaborate and come up with better solutions for a better future. And of course, we are against other agendas and other narratives that ultimately want to take that away from us. So who knows? I'm trying. Sometimes, like, you don't see me on here very much. I am building in the background. There's a lot of us on here who, that we go through seasons of talking and building and breakthrough and setback and breakthrough and ideas. There are good people on here. I see Be the Change is one of those. Like, when we got started on here, there were brilliant developers that we were talking to. We were having beautiful conversations. Unfortunately, some of those get hijacked. There are brilliant people, and there are brilliant people, like kind people and smart people. And if you can merge those networks together, whatever that is, and come up with that is going to be your only hope. You can only do what you can do, period.
So let's zoom out. If your research is correct, and we're not just in an economic downturn, but a complete system transition, how much time do you think that people have to prepare before the system fully shifts digital?
Well, we're in the midst, right? Like, that's the question. If you want to look at the adoption curve, like, there's ways that you can measure of how this adoption is happening, through tech adoption. So let's look at any introduction of a new technology per se into the market. So horse and buggy, when the cars were entered in, how long did it take the car to be adopted? You have that curve. Then you have the curve of different technologies coming in. You have the internet. How long did it take the internet to be adopted? You have blockchain and crypto. How long did that take to be adopted? That's happening on shorter and shorter time frames. So then you have the AI curve. AI is now one of the fastest adopted technologies. So these curves keep getting shorter and shorter and adopted faster and faster. So I think as we transition into the next financial system, I think that it happens at a much faster rate than what it typically does. And here's what's really interesting is we see historical narratives contracting the same way. So let's go through like the last system leading up to the World War. We had a pandemic. We had the Roaring 20s. We had a market crash. We had a basically a kind of a debt jubilee, a revaluing of a system through the 1933 gold buyback. And then there's that is an indication that currency's failing around the war. We get Weimar Republic. This leads to World War II, which shifts our system, okay? Now let's look back at the past 5 years. That happened with the span of 2019 to 1945.
We're already checking off a lot of those.
So if you feel like you've lived in eternity the past 5 years, it's because you've lived a lot of timelines condensed very, very fast. All of that to say, that's why I think I think that is in essence a result of technology. And so I think that, this will take people by surprise because And then this time might be different because, okay, Paycom here in Oklahoma City just laid off 500 people. Paycom is one of the biggest employers in Oklahoma City. And they are one of the big reason that they gave, it was their back office, not their customer facing. Their back office settlement said it was replaced by both AI and they, I can't remember how they said AI and other system like progressive. And I knew what that other system was. Like I kind of like this company is one that was like, if you're not gonna build a better solution, I might become one of your competitors if I get in the room with the right person. I know how to, that's kind of how I think about things. But they just got done laying off 500 people. This might actually get AI blockchain, the middleman it takes out, the amount that AI and jobs take out, there might be a glut. When we're talking about people who attach identities to what they do, that's not a good system. And so enter in a bunch of other agendas. 15. What do you do with a population that's sitting at home? Yeah. How do you track them? Oh, let's keep them within a 15-minute city and track where they go all the time. And let's shift how they make money, so even like how jobs and how you make money, realize that is shifting, and there's going to be a glut in possible jobs, and there is going to be something that backfills that. I think UBI might be a part of that, but also people are building out brand new ways to create this network effect and derive value, right? So we might have a very different form of like this, like kind of Black Mirror e-commerce that we, are just dreaming of and building right now. So
UBI is such a deep thing to really go into, and I mean, even like in New York, right? When you're paying attention to the $15,000 in stablecoins that they're going to give to low income families to see what they're going to do with it. I know in New York they have a mayor election coming up, and it really could change the entire city. One of them is definitely for UBI, free groceries. Almost communistic ideas, and it's almost kind of scary to see how easily the city could change within such a short period of time. But within this time frame, do you think of the digital era, do you think that we are early, in the middle, or are we approaching the end game?
So we are approaching, so it depends the end of what. Crypto as we have known it in the 4-year cycle, I'm going to say something a little controversial. Yes, I think that's done. I do. I think
we're on the same page.
Because naturally, right? Like it can't, as regulation comes in, as we see like what the rules of the road are, as we see institutions come in, because we have only had a retail facing crypto market. And I know there's been a whole bunch of stuff happening in the background. We're going to see how that all comes to light. When we talk about the rails of the system, people are like, it's already adopted. Yes and no, they're making these merge. So think about a railroad system. You might build your railroad in your community and have all of these siloed systems. And then you're watching those webs come together. And as those webs come together and regulation comes in behind that, then you're allowed to allow that train to pass. And so that train to pass is going to be value as it comes on chain, and regulation formed around whatever that industry that's coming on chain. And so then as those terms of value are going across the networks, then we get to see the network effect, or the Metcalfe law, the network of network, this ecosystem really emerge. And so we really get to see who really are the big players. And we're watching those through the decisions that are being made now. And and so it's like, what is I can't be so sad. I have a portfolio of a bunch of these. And I love HBAR. I've been buying HBAR for a few years. I've really honed in on it in the past few months. Guess what I got to see? Wyoming choose HBAR as their stable coin. Am I mad? Am I on here going, it's not XRP? No, I'm going like, heck yes. 49 other states. I have all which one are we building them off of? Fellas? It's fun, and so many people want to make it not fun. That Michael Scott quote, that's just like, why are you the way that you are? Every time I try to have a little bit of fun, you make it not that way. I'm like, this is fun. Like, this is test time. Like, I came into investing in crypto going like, I think I know what's happening. I think I understand, like, and I'm gonna research this. I'm gonna buy the things that that I think is gonna be used in the future, and we'll see. That's still my attitude 5 years later.
It's so refreshing talking to somebody that's so intelligent and someone that has the foresight as to what is to come. Because unfortunately, no matter how many great educators there are, no matter how many great videos there are, the people just they just want that feel good information. It's gonna go to $200,000. It's gonna do great. You're gonna make $1 million. When's the Lambo? They don't want to sit down and actually. It's that get rich quick, that microwave mentality, that Minute Maid, instead of just saying, "Hey,
Yes.
invest in the infrastructure, the rails, take a look at the pilots, the programs, and play a bet." And maybe 5 years it'll be enough. A lot of people, they don't have that discipline, but it's so refreshing because there's so many people that think we are still going to have this speculative cycle. And there's so many people out there that think that crypto can't go to a total market cap of 100 trillion. There's so many people out there that buy into this speculation myth. And there's not many of us that are sitting back and going, wait a minute, the institutions are coming. And we can only yell it from the rooftops for so long before people actually get locked out of the system that is going to change everybody's life.
People like it's been so frustrating. And here's where I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant, and hopefully you record this and I can get it a little bit because I have some things to say to people around me. This is I have been
She goes, listen up.
listen, but and it's not like this isn't. I've had to come to these conclusions and this way of thinking. I've been on here for 4 years and I've said some pretty crazy stuff. Like the system is failing. This is going to be the answer to the new system. And then I have watched people watch me who still look at me like I have three eyes. And I've been like, this is going to happen. This is going to happen. And for 4 years, watched it go, da, 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 da. And people in my personal life that just, fine, I'm done. I'm done being the Jehovah's Witness of crypto. Because and people think it's not this like I want to be
That's
right.
a great analogy. That's such a great analogy. The Jehovah's Witnesses of crypto. Wow, thank you.
I was like, that's what I feel right now. Because I am so tired. I am so tired of some in my personal life, like trying to save everybody. People complain to me all the time how hard it is. They're scared about their rates. They're scared, and they don't want to hear it. I'm done talking. Fine. The people who have listened, thank you so much. It's going to be a fun ride, and man, you've set your family up. Congratulations. The reason why people have this dream, okay, I'll say this. Whenever you're little or you're watching even today, like a doomsday movie or like a pandemic movie, like a suspenseful movie and something's happening and there's people who survive and people who don't. Oh, 19, holy cow. Who's been, goodness, guys, thank you so much. I think over the past 4 years, I know who lives and who dies in this movie. I'll say that. And if you're one of those people who you're sitting in the world that we're in right now, and you're like, everything's fine. What is she talking about? Why is she so crazy? Well, good luck. Good stinking luck.
Fantasy football, bro. Fantasy football.
This is my Super Bowl. Okay. Sit back and watch because I think like for some of us it's a kind of a dark ride, but the fun part is if you have prepared, this is actually one of the best times in history to be alive. And there are plenty of things to be hopeful for. There's a lot of things to be cautious about. there's a lot of work to do. We do not have time for negativity. Oh, thank you, Barry. We do not have time for negativity. Zero.
So speaking of hope, we're going to get into that into the next question. But do you think that this transition ends with a one world digital currency, or is it something much deeper than that?
Okay. Okay, can you hear
That's
me?
cool. Thank you.
Oh, dang, goodness. I cannot believe I will be distributing this back out into the community. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. My headphones just failed.
Do you need the question one more time?
Do what?
Do you need the question one more time?
No, I got it. So ultimately, yes, like, who am I to say that the good book that I believe and put a lot of faith in is wrong? That's where this all goes. I have zero control over it. Like, truly. And so it's not like, I think people get it wrong because it's not going to be a one world currency, I don't think, in our lifetime. But in essence, like, what's the difference between a one world currency or a one world system that in essence like talks and flows together all the same?
Yeah.
And so I think it's tomato, but yeah, like even Elon Musk talks about a singularity. While we're talking about, whenever you talk about one world order, that's what I was kind of alluding to in when I reference Babel and when I reference like technology and siloed systems. And like when we talk about one world order, there's an infrastructure that goes into that. That's this infrastructure. It's interesting because Tucker Carlson actually has an interview out right now with a guy who actually grew up in Hollywood and is kind of like into the occultist and stuff. And he's a Christian, and so he has done like his own type of unique research into it, and Tucker interviews him. And he said that he has talked to a lot of these tech developers and asked them, like, showed them Revelation and said, what do you think? And they're like, yeah, that sounds like the system we're creating. Wow. So I listened to that today, which I thought was interesting. So that's the question, like, as a Christian, do I feel comfortable investing into that? Well, if I stay in fiat, what do I do then too? So again, like, I pray for discernment and,
Yeah. As a Christian, the same thing. It's not sinful to become wealthy off of something, but if it's that love of money, the system's coming no matter what. Ultimately, you can never have enough of it, and you could always be chasing it, and you're just never fulfilled by it. Or you could take what you have and do something good with it. And I think that that's ultimately what we're called to do. With that being said, what gives you hope in all of this?
Again, like us, like what I see, I like to take things in networks or layers and kind of reduce it down. And whenever I raise my mind and look at, especially just within my own ecosystem or my own network, I look at you. You're one of the people that give me hope. You're one of the people that understand. Yes. And it's called, like, this is the fun thing about network effect and Metcalfe's law. And it doesn't just work with XRP. It doesn't just work with this technology system. It works within your ecosystem. And so it's people, like, what I am watching are really good people who have good intentions, and those people are finding each other. And vice versa. I find that you just have to sit back and you watch the network effect take over. You just do. And so what you do, we think that progress and revolution has to happen on this like big macro, big event scale. What really shifts and moves people are tiny little ecosystems, are little itty bitty fires. If you really want to burn a forest fire, like, get little fires started together and then watch whenever that network effect takes, in a good way. We're not trying to destroy things, but like, take that fire reference and think about your ecosystem and you doing what you can, how you can, building the good. And you have all these other ecosystems doing the same thing, and those converge and meet. That is where true power and magic and network effect happen. And so I think if we do that, we have some hope and we can shift this at least for a little bit. It really depends on us how fast down this road we take it. The rest of the world is showing us. I'm not all that hopeful from where they're going, because some of them are like, chip me, sign me up for. You think that the people in the UK are going to have, I mean, they took we have Second Amendment rights here, protected by First Amendment rights. They handed those over not too long ago. And now you have digital IDs. Yeah. What are you going to do to resist it?
Nope, nothing.
So we have to be thinking about, as far as, I'm an American and that's my ecosystem right now. Oklahoma is a smaller ecosystem. Your community is a smaller ecosystem. Your family is a smaller ecosystem. You build those things and we'll be fine. Give that power to a centralized system and read your history books. That's not good.
What a fucking answer. Wow. Wow. I just need a second to just sit in that one.
It's big. It's network effect.
Ecosystem within ecosystem. Change by change, little by little, day by day, person to person. And it has a bigger impact than what you think. Damn. You're deep. What are you doing on here?
I'm not on here very much. It does not make me the best person sometimes.
And then you get the guy on here that's arguing with you about market cap. What do you mean?
Right.
It's always the dollar. It's always the dollar.
It is so people. I mean, just people who just are absolutely hell bent on misunderstanding you. I'm not interested in that. Thanks.
All right, Brooke, I'd like to jump into one of our last top talking points in here. It's rapid fire questions, which will then be followed by your final thoughts and message. So you believe that history repeats itself. Is it perfectly designed, perfectly orchestrated, perfectly engineered to do so? Or is it just coincidence?
No, so what's so funny is I saw a post from kind of a revolutionary preacher in the sect there's movements happening all across the world. So what I'm finding is he goes, I would have time for conspiracy theories, but I'm too busy in the current reality. And I just want to be like, people don't realize how constructed their quote unquote reality is. And so even with our financial system, I've spent the past over 15 years studying that, and you really do realize, take it all the way back to 1910, Jekyll Island. A few men dictated today.
Yep.
On an island, secretively. Oddly owning the same system. Oddly so that's how you can also tell it shifted instead of didn't really power and money just shifted. It didn't, And so it's going to shift again. We'll see.
And maybe just oddly, all of the people that would have opposed them ended up on a ship. Ended up in the bottom of the ocean. I don't know, maybe not. Yes.
Poor Astor. John Jacob, rest his soul. Thanks, man. You did.
Brooke, is collapse necessary for renewal?
Well, nature demands it. Before rebirth, there's always a death. And so whenever we talk about the death of the dollar, it's so funny because people trolled me so hard on that. We've had the name of the dollar for a long time. But we've had the system of which underpins the dollar has died many times. So now that we had a fiat currency system, that the gold backed dollar died, right? Like we've had all of these, we've had the dollar and then all of these things that back the dollar rise and fall. And so that's kind of how you can and there's so much, semantics people want to play. But there's multiple ways to skin a cat. There's multiple ways that currency falls, but this one's happening in a very classic way, in a very when we talk about cycles, people are like, oh, well, there's always recession. I'm like, you're talking about a 7-year business cycle. People don't zoom out another level. There's 40-year cycles on the broader monetary level, and then you take it up another notch. There's world cycles that shift, and all of those happen on certain timelines. So you have a 7-year cycle, you have a 40-year cycle, and you have a 90 to 100-year cycle. And so those little cycles ultimately lead to the big whammy.
What is more dangerous, ignorance or dependence?
Oh, both. You get those two. That's what we have together, and it's by design, because I can't fault people. Whenever I went on that rant, that comes with a certain amount of understanding of people are so, and it's by design. When you're a rat on a wheel, you don't have time to think about why you're on that wheel, right? Like, and someone's trying to talk to you over here and you're like, shut up, I'm running. And that's by design. You can't think of much else whenever so I just have, whenever they keep a bunch of people busy, it's the fact that I kind of made different lifestyle choices beforehand. Like we live kind of I don't want to say an alternative, I'm relatively normal. But there's reasons why, I get to be a stay-at-home mom, and some other, people in my generation, it's very rare. And that's not because, of course, luck played a role, but it was kind of planning and prepping. And, I've been able to be at home. And of course, being a mom is fun and everything, but my brain needs something else to do. So I've had the luxury of being able to really understand what's happening. And so I kind of feel like, I've been made for such a time as this to kind of give people a reference to, making sense of the world that they're finding themselves in, the headlines day after day. And it seems really big and scary. And it is. These things have very pronounced consequences depending on where you live across the world. We're international. This, the consequences with these global system shifts are not the same across the board. It's not going to be the same thing for Americans as it is the Argentinian, as it is your Rwandan, your Australian. It's going to be very different. And so you have to go, how much buffer can I put between me and it? And that's really what you need to be working towards right now.
If freedom had a price tag, what would that be?
If freedom had a price tag?
If your freedom...
It's your life. It's your life. And that's kind of one of those hard truths. And we've seen that in recent events. And then a quote that came after that, I was listening to a documentary maker. His name escapes me. Oh, what's his name? Oh, he's made a bunch of documentaries. So he goes, if the price is not your life, then you are for sale. And that statement was so profound to me, because it's especially in these investments and in upcoming decisions I might have to make. It might be one of those things that it's are you able to leave your treasure to make a decision? Are you able to hand over your life for and there are very few things I'm able to hand over my life for. And freedom, my kids, like this has very serious implications to me. So like, and the weight of some of the things that I say, like I've had to think very carefully, you know, especially with upcoming surveillance. And I don't know how this shakes out on the other end of global conflict. Sometimes I don't know if I know my next ruler all that much. So there's things that like when we look at history and we see sometimes these things unfold, they don't unfold very pretty. So there's kind of those things that it's like that might have to be my decision, and I'm at peace with that.
There's something that stuck with me over the last 5 years, and it was definitely during COVID. And I swear I don't know who this is from, but when you trade your freedom for your safety, you will end up with neither. And that was something that I've always kind of stuck with. And it is true. It was during COVID, how quickly people gave up their freedoms for that feeling of safety. And very often, when you find these institutions, whether it's government or pharmaceuticals, whatever it is, most of the time they often implement the problem and let the crisis, let the panic set in, and then they usher in the solution. Meanwhile, it was all orchestrated from the same doctor who issued it in the first place.
The last thing you want a government to say is, I'm here to help.
Yes.
And
yes.
the very first thing that we go to, that people our age, there's a whole movement that's like, government pay me this, government pay, like
Daddy,
the government. No,
Daddy,
no.
Government, please take care of me.
And that's how we vote. Like that is how you get debt too, because no, you know, whenever you can print all this money, like who's going to say like, we can't afford that right now, children. Like if you can vote your parents out, it's like you're gonna, you know.
It was almost like heartbreaking to watch, because I was a very young man when COVID had happened. I was just kind of formulating my own perspectives on being an American, kind of what religion meant to me. I've been religious all my life, but I was really more in tune at that moment. And I had a clear distinction where I was either going to choose freedom at the sacrifice of my comfort and my career and my future, or I was going to give in to the social pressures of taking the jab, and it was going to sacrifice my values, my morals, anything to that degree. And just to see how many people kind of gave into that social peer pressure, especially men. And from the people that I've talked to in person, the jab was something that they regretted. It's not something that they wanted. They got it out of either fear of losing their job, they had to pay their mortgage, or look, I understand if you got it for medical reasons, but if you're a man and you didn't want to get it, but you got it out of, they twisted your arm to get it. I think that it's almost cowardice. It's a spirit of cowardice, and it's something very difficult for me to respect. So as a young man, looking at how the country responded to that, so many people kind of gave into that arm twisting. And I want to ask you, which one wins in the end? Is it freedom or is it comfort?
Well, right now it looks like comfort is giving way, and really, even your conservative people, they don't talk about it, or they wouldn't out and out say that, I want to hand over my freedom for comfort. But then I watch, their Facebook posts, a few of their personal beliefs. And because we've done such I'm sorry to use my country French, piss poor job at educating kids in philosophy, they can't really understand, like, what are you really understanding? What are you saying whenever you say, like, as good as the intention might be, whatever program it might be, like Save the Well program, whatever benevolent thing you can think of, that comes at a cost whenever you have debt, okay? And so whenever you do, math doesn't care that you save the wells. Your pocketbook right now is telling you maybe you shouldn't have spent America like experiments on, frogs. Maybe you should be like those types of things. Yeah, you get what you get, right?
If the schools aren't teaching real education, who should?
That's where, oh, it's not that. So we have plenty of well-educated teachers. It's really the system. So whenever you have to remember, whenever you give over your individual power, you fall under an umbrella that does not take the individual into consideration, which is why it's important that we are a constitutional republic. It's because it does take the individual into consideration. And whenever you hear people talk about democracy and not that the fact that we're a constitutional republic, they're replacing the fact that democracy in essence, it's a good idea, but the nuance of that is the individual. Democracy and majority rule dictates, it wouldn't determine if the majority wanted to take away your rights. Yeah. The constitutional republic says, this document over here says, these are my rights that you cannot tread upon. And though we are one system, it's the individual that's looked after. And this buffer, the Constitution, determines how my government, the rights my government has with me, not vice versa.
Yeah. Wow.
So we have to get that attitude back.
That's great. That's deep. What do you think is one thing that every household should be preparing for?
First thing, your family. If you can't feed a community if you can't feed your own mouth. And so you have to decentralize yourself to whenever there's, you're not handy. If you have options and someone says, do this, do that, you can say, screw you, I can do this.
Yeah.
So make sure, no matter what that is, that you're setting yourself up with more options than you are like chains to something. So that means debt. That means sometimes commitment. That means, yeah.
What do you think is more valuable, money, land, or knowledge?
Without knowledge, we see what happens with rich people of the past. They lose, by the third generation, the money's lost. Look at the Vanderbilts. You see, what's his face? His crybaby face. He's a Vanderbilt. Anyway, no money for him. So what's funny is all of those come together, but can be squandered without wisdom and knowledge. And so if you're wanting to restore, keep your wealth, historically, art, land, and gold is how people of wealth have. If you do look at the very few families that have retained their wealth, that's how they retain it over years. But then they really are very strict with their kids. The education that the rich get is very different than the education we get. And whenever you spoil the child, then you see the wisdom part take away the land and the gold and the wealth. So
how do you define wealth in a world that's digital?
That is going to be that's a very interesting question. What has value? What is wealth? Will human handmade things become more scarce, become more valuable because of the digital system? Or do we lose, in essence, something that's true? That is very true, Solomon. Weak men create good times, bad times create strong men create good times. That happens in little ecosystems, but that principle, whenever you're talking about a principle, that works in any ecosystem, a family, a country, whatnot.
That's a great one. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Wealth in the digital world.
Oh, wealth in digital. So what is going to be valuable? Who knows? What do you find valuable? And also what is wealth? Let's just say this whole crypto thing doesn't work out and we're not stinking rich afterwards. What is wealth? Okay, well, I've come away from here with a lot of good friends, a lot of good people, a community. Community is wealth. Having a good people around you that are like-minded is such a blessing. Like, it's so understated and it's so needed. And whenever you don't have it, you really know you're lacking in it. So family, community, that's wealth. Health is wealth. If you don't have your health, you don't have anything. And then also just kind of being satisfied. Like, of course, that's very hard to do whenever times are so hard. And, and that's one of my passions. Like, there's so much shame and guilt associated with times like these. If you're feeling that way right now, and this is one of the reasons why I've been so vocal in my personal life, times are hard. Like, your wages are not keeping pace with inflation. If you're struggling making the bills, it's like, try not to make that a moral like plague on yourself. Just know, again, like, these are very strange times in history, and you have been subjected to a lot of, like, and I hate the victim mentality, but there is really something to say that we truly are subject to a system that we don't control. And because we haven't been educated, you might find yourself in a situation right now that's very hard, and you might be very down and depressed. Know that it's built to do that. But now that you have this information, this knowledge, you can build your way out. And there's, be careful who you listen to. But also, wealth is also wanting what not like being satisfied with what you already have and realizing at the end it's kind of meaningless.
Right. Is decentralization a part of is it the rebellion or is it the plan?
It's both. So there is a plan and there is a digital plan. There's gonna be people who, and I don't want to say, like, you can get conspiratorial, but you have to realize that there are entities and agendas that want to move the world in a certain way that you might not want to go. Okay. How are you going to do that? Are you going to be like, Daddy government, save me?
Daddy government.
Help me, Daddy.
Feed me.
Feed me. Because then you turn into, speaking of, I have a homestead. I feed my animals. I'm a very benevolent keeper. But if I turned rogue the next day, do they have much of a say? Don't make yourself a farm animal. Not in this world, not right now.
So if I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
If the system burns down tomorrow, what actually survives out of it?
So the system, like, tomorrow you can't access cash type of system, like what type of, like, there's lots of different crises that could happen.
Yeah, we can go with that, sure.
So that's when my homestead, that investment bucket, like, really takes off, right? So it's full circle, like, end of the world happens, collapse, hope, I have this bucket prepared over here. I can only do so much. Right. So yeah, like, community, like, when that happens, it creates its own ecosystem. So different things become valuable. Cash money very quickly doesn't become valuable because it's trash. So food, shelter, like, this is where I go into, like, my prepped, like, you gotta, ammo, like, like, it's Mad Max.
we're on the same
Chickens.
wavelength. Same wavelength there. I think we're on the same ideology as well. Do you think that the system wants a crash or a reset?
What's the difference?
Two things can be true at once.
Yeah. It's all, so, like, a crash is a reset in essence. And what's really funny is, even, like, we're in the year of Jubilee, apparently, even in, like, the Catholic, like, and I'm not Catholic, but it's very interesting watching, like, ceremony. Did you know that?
I'm a Catholic, and I don't even know what you're referring to. The Jubilee calendar? Vatican calendar or something?
So what's fascinating is, I can take, this gets really esoteric. Sorry. So naturally, like, I'm a Bible school teacher. So in how God created like civilization, like how he told them to deal with each other, he actually instituted a reset. He demanded, so like the Jewish nations, there is called a year of Jubilee. It was every seventh year. And according to that Jewish law, all the slaves were to be set free and debts were to be forgiven. And God gave very specific commands of how the Jewish people were to deal financially with each other. Like the Bible talks a lot about money, so they couldn't do usury. So Jewish people can't charge each other interest, but they use interest and debt to, okay. So they use these principles. Okay. So, so what's interesting is when you go outside, like that's an economic system. He put in a reset within that system because, and this is just kind of science, and you see this in the natural world, you see this in economics when we talk about equalization or equalization of the market. Ultimately, the world becomes unbalanced, right? Typically because of debt and all the, and then there's a reckoning and things become rebalanced. You're in a rebalance. So a reset is a rebalancing. So what you're feeling is the world becoming so out of balance. And what you're feeling is there's going to be this pinnacle thing that like rebalances things. It's a reckoning.
You said
World War II was one of those. It was a rebalancing.
And that it's such a relevant number in the Bible, 7. But you said it was what did you say? It was the seventh what?
Seventh year. So it was it's the 49th year. Every 49 years. So the whole idea, and that was within a person's lifetime. You're not supposed to go within debt that extends a person's lifetime. But what do we do as a financial, like as a system here in the United States? When we take on all this debt, we indebt our children and our children's children and our children's children. And whenever you don't have this reset, that's essentially what you're doing. So you, like your children are it's like the sins of the father. And it's the sin, like we're feeling what we feel right now because the sins of our fathers, like 1971. Thank you, Dirty Dick. Like his name, that's what they called Nixon.
Oh. I thought somebody had commented something.
No. That's what they called Nixon. So that's what history calls him that. So I'm going to call him that too, because truly, screw you, dude. Woodrow Wilson, the same thing. Like Elon Musk had this meme where he goes, I die and go to hell. And he's like, show me Woodrow Wilson. Like Elon Musk gets the rage that I get. Yeah.
What is one thing that you would tell people before the crisis actually hits?
Well, I've been here saying it. How have we got like people? So people who've been following me here is like nothing that I've said here, it has been different. My thesis, when I saw what system they were creating, I said, Americans would never go for this unless we absolutely have to. That has to looks like a global liquidity crisis reset. That means historically World War, Civil War. So I was here 4 years ago saying this, and people were calling me a fearmonger, and I didn't know what I was talking. And I'm just like, no, this is just the world how I see it. And I've watched us march along this trek. I actually came up with 4 essentially different tracks, like routes that this could take. And the most conspiratorial one, but pegged to history, is tracking the best. Scary enough.
Do you think that we could fix it, or rebuild it from scratch?
So when we talk about math, so Metcalfe's law is called exponential math. It's a network effect. So we think of people and humans think of math linearly. They think that, if I'm going to draw a graph, they think that time tracks like this, kind of up but over. Okay. They think it does this, and flip this, okay? That's linear math. This is linear straight line thinking. This is what exponential math looks like. It gets bad and it gets weird real fast. So, Einstein said this: the eighth wonder of the world is compound interest. The world finds itself right now so indebted, so that network effect, that snowball is picking up so much steam. I don't know if we can stop it. What's interesting on like an economic, like if I'm in an econ class and I'm like, there's two ends of this equation. There's your debt equation, but then there's your GDP. Now, does this system, this new financial system, and the commerce that comes from it, and the economic beast that could be released from this, does it catch up to that system, right? Like, that's the only thing that could theoretically like chase that exponential math, is this exponential technology coming in. But that's scary too, because that means we kick this crappy system down the road. So I don't know.
You've connected so many dots from the Great Depression to where we're going, 2008, to what's coming next. And I think that most people are now maybe just starting to catch up with things that we've been talking about years. And you have this way of bringing clarity to the chaos. You do it in such an intelligent way. And I don't view it as a means of fear, but I think it's all about awareness. And awareness is maybe how we get the power back to we the people. Brooke, do you have a final message for the people?
It's really kind of what I've been saying this whole time. Like, you're in, like, recognize where you're at in history. Realize, and it's not to be fearful, like this is quote unquote scary. Don't let fear drive you. But true, like the only thing that overcomes fear is love and truth. And so whenever scripture talks about whatever is true, whatever is praiseworthy, whatever is noble, like think about these things. And so it's kind of, and it's like, be the change, like truly, like you see something, like change it. Giving it up to the government. That's what they're wanting you to do. They're wanting to herd you into a system where it looks like they're giving you all of your needs. And be very careful. Having said that, build the future that you want to see. As much as you can, try to think about, when I vote, what am I actually voting for? Does that hurt me in the long run? Are they trying to use my emotions to, okay? And then know, like, when you're in a trap and how to escape it. And then just be good, be kind. Like, if you're a business owner right now and you're scared of AI and you're scared of this technology, like you should be building out your own solutions. You should be getting with industry people that are experts, that have multiple different talents, and then talking about it, building business, do things, like get prepared. That's all. Get some chickens, get a farm, get a community. Like, well, and just do what you can. It doesn't have to, like, start small. Like, if you can't have a chicken, your neighbor's a gardener, great. You have vegetables and eggs, make stir fry. I don't know,
You are so intelligent, and it's so refreshing to speak to somebody who I find some very familiar common grounds with. And I think that you are very clear-minded as to where we're going. And I have a lot of respect for where your awareness and your education is going, because there's not enough people that are educating people as to what's coming, but also telling them, hey, that there is a dark side for it. You may be wealthy with it, but what's the point of it if you have no personal sovereignty or freedom?
Right. Like, don't be toxically positive and don't be toxically negative. There's a yin and a yang. It's a tool. Be smart out there. Be safe.
Brooke, I want to say thank you so much for being guest on episode 10 of the Sit Down. I think that my viewers and your viewers uh, have a lot of researching to do, and hopefully they learned at least one thing, and we're spreading the awareness and expanding the possibilities of what is to come.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I like this was such a refreshing thing to come on, and I like to just yap. I do truly. It's my heart to be like, take this and then go do something. Go do something about it. Be a small fire.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. Look, it's all about these sit downs are all about the guests and what they believe and their viewpoints and their message. This is your space to talk. But I thank you so much for giving me the time and giving the audience something to sit with over the next week.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good night, everybody.
Night, guys. Thank you in the comments. That's incredible.
Yes. Thank you
What
guys
in the
for all
world?
the donations. 230,000 likes. Let's go, baby.
That's crazy.
That was
Thank you.
sick.
People in the
You guys
community.
killed it.
Thank you. You're also the answer. Love you guys.
Guys, utility over speculation 100% of the time. All right. Good night, everybody.